Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Like a pair of eyes following your every move, even in the dead of night? You try to ignore it, but that sense of unease lingers, growing stronger and stronger until a creeping dread fills your veins. You dare to glance over your shoulder, but there's nothing there, or is there? For beyond your vision, in the depths of the dark and sinister woods, lies a presence that defies explanation. The Slender Man, with his billowing suit, impossibly long limbs, and a featureless face, is always watching and waiting. Waiting for the moment when he can step out of the shadows and claim you as his next victim. So keep your wits about you and watch your back. Because when it comes to the Slender Man, those who see him never truly escape. The heart of the small town of Oakville was filled with fear and panic. Children were no longer allowed out to play in the streets, and residents shut their doors tight as darkness descended. The rumors and tales about the Slender Man had grown too monstrous to ignore. He no longer represented an urban legend, but he who lurked in the shadows. He had claimed the lives of many, and the fear he provoked lingered in the air, thick and menacing. There were many who still doubted the Slender Man's existence. They dismissed the stories and rumors as the tales of the idle and the superstitious. But the majority of the townsfolk knew better. They knew he was very real, haunting and claiming souls at opportune moments. Maggie, a resident who had lived in Oakville for decades, knew how dangerous the Slender Man was. She had seen him years ago when she was walking through the woods. His presence had filled her with a sense of dread that she would never forget. She couldn't describe the sheer terror that had gripped her body upon his gaze. She had thought she had gotten away, but deep inside, she knew that he would always be there, waiting for her. Her fears proved true when an old friend, Sarah, disappeared from her home. It was the third loss in the neighborhood that month, and the townsfolk knew deep down that the Slender Man was to blame. Maggie knew that she had to do something. She was convinced that she was the only one with enough courage and resilience to face the creature and put an end to his reign of terror. She remembered a story that her grandma had told her when she was a child, of a way to kill the Slender Man. It would not be easy, but it was the only way. She had to come face to face with the monster and chop off his limbs with a silver sword while speaking an incantation. The sword and incantation were difficult enough to procure, but finding someone the Slender Man had not claimed as his own was even more challenging. Maggie was afraid, but she knew she had to put an end to the Slender Man's terror once and for all, even if it meant giving up her own life in the process. Maggie set out for the woods with nothing but a silver sword and a piece of paper with an incantation on it. She didn't have a plan of attack. She was simply following her instincts, her heart pounding with each step she took. It wasn't long before she heard the first whisper of the Slender Man's presence.
"You shouldn't be here."
The voice hissed from the darkness. Maggie kept walking, though her knees were shaking. "I know what you've been doing," she said, her voice loud and clear in the stillness. "I'm here to end it." The trees rustled, and Maggie caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. The Slender Man was there, his tall form looming over her. He didn't say anything, but Maggie felt the weight of his gaze. She reached for her sword and slowly drew it out of its scabbard. The silver blade glinted in the moonlight, and Maggie held it steady. "I know what I have to do," she said, reading off the incantation with every ounce of conviction she could muster. The Slender Man hissed and writhed as Maggie's magic took hold, sparks of silver light shining through the darkness. As the final lines of the incantation left her lips, she swung the sword with all her might, cleaving one of the Slender Man's limbs from his body. The creature howled in rage, but Maggie was already fully committed. She swung again and again and again until every one of the Slender Man's limbs had been severed. Then, with a final command, she sent his wraith form back to whence he came. The town resonated with joy, with everyone cheering and thanking Maggie, the champion who had finally defeated the Slender Man. Finally, Oakville was at peace once again, and the rumors became no more than stories told around campfires. But Maggie knew that he would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for someone else who was brave enough to finally face him. The townsfolk sang Maggie's praises, but she knew she could never forget what she had witnessed. In the back of her mind, she could still hear the Slender Man's unearthly scream echoing through the trees. She knew that even though the Slender Man was gone, there would always be more horrors waiting to strike. As she walked down the street, Maggie was startled to see a shadow twist out of shape before her. She tensed, her hand going instinctively to her sword, but the shape quickly took form into a familiar figure. It was a small boy. The boy was lost, he told her, wandering the woods in search of his parents. Maggie promised she would help him find his way. But as they walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The woods were too quiet, the air too thick. It was as if the Slender Man had left a mark on everything around him, a stain that would never go away. Suddenly, the boy vanished into thin air. Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that something had taken him, something that was still out there, lurking in the shadows. The sound of twigs snapping pierced the silence. Maggie knew that she was not alone, and that the Slender Man had not been defeated after all. He was there, waiting for her, Maggie's heart pounding against her chest. She drew her sword once again, her hands slick with sweat. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her nerves. When she opened them again, she found herself facing the entity once again. The figure of the Slender Man towered over her, writhing with fury. She didn't know how she had survived the first time, let alone how she could hope to fight him again. But Maggie did not falter. She breathed in, closing her eyes for a moment to gather her courage. When she opened them again, she felt a sense of power surging through her veins. She had faced him once before, and she was not going to back down now. With a roar, she launched herself at the creature, her sword flashing in the dim light as she attacked with all her might. The Slender Man fought back, but Maggie was not afraid. She had faced worse than this. She had slain him once and for all before. She could do it again. As the final blow hit, there was a sudden burst of light. The Slender Man's form crumpled and faded into dust, leaving nothing behind but the burning light of the morning sun. As the world slowly returned to normal, Maggie breathed a sigh of relief, the shadow of the Slender Man vanishing with the morning mist. But Maggie knew that he was never truly gone, that the darkness he personified would always linger in the corner of our minds, lurking in the shadows and waiting for someone brave enough to face it. But as Maggie walked back to town, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Slender Man's presence was still there, haunting her every step. And so I ask you, have you ever felt like something was watching you, even when you were alone? Have you ever sensed a creeping dread that you couldn't explain? Perhaps it was just your imagination. Or perhaps something far more sinister is lurking in the darkness, waiting to claim you as its next victim. So watch your back, keep your wits about you, and be wary of what lurks beyond the edge of your sight. For you never know what horrors may be hiding in plain sight, waiting to pounce when you least expect it.